Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this TMS webinar entitled The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs by Professor Steve Broussard from the University of Edinburgh. So as you know, the dinosaurs ruled the Earth for over 150 million years, evolving into spectacular giants like Brontosaurus and T-Rex. In this talk, paleontologist Steve Broussard, author of the book The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, will recount the complete story of where dinosaurs came from, how they rose up to dominance, how most of them went extinct when a giant asteroid hit, and how some of them lived on as today's birds. So Steve Broussard is a paleontologist who hunts and writes about the dinosaurs. He is a professor at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, but grew up in the Midwestern USA. And his ancient father's family came from northern Italy. So Steve has traveled around the world digging up dinosaurs, and working with many international colleagues has named more than 15 new species, including the Tyrannosaurus Pinocchiorex and the Raptor Dinosaur. He has written several books for kids and adults, most notably the adult pop science book The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs in 2018, which was a New York Times bestseller in US and Sunday Times bestseller in the UK. He is the paleontology consultant of the Jurassic World Functions. So we are very happy and honored to host Steve today in the TMS. And Steve, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. I'm really excited to have this chance to chat with you guys and to talk a little bit about dinosaurs. So I know our time is fairly tight, and we want to get through the talk bit in a half an hour or so. So I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. Hopefully you're all seeing this. So I'm going to talk about dinosaurs today, and that's what I do. I'm one of those lucky people who gets to study dinosaurs and dig up dinosaurs for my job, which is an amazing thing. And I do this here in Edinburgh in Scotland, in the very beautiful capital city of Scotland, very far from where I grew up, but an amazing place for paleontology and for fossils and for geology in general here in Scotland. We're a very old university. The science of geology, we claim to have started it right here, so I'm very lucky to have ended up, of all places, here in Edinburgh. We have a very active, dynamic, diverse, and growing paleontology group of students and postdocs and faculty here at the university. A few years ago, I wrote this book, The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, and I was very, very, very happy when it was translated into Italian. I was so pleased. And I hope the translation's good. In fact, I know it's pretty good because I came to Italy once and I did some talks about the book, and I got to know the publisher and everything. So I'm just so happy the book is out in Italian, and there's the nice Italian cover there for you. And what I want to do here in this talk, in the short amount of time we have, is I want to give you this run through of the history of dinosaurs. I want to tell you the story of the dinosaurs, where the dinosaurs came from, how the dinosaurs rose up and became dominant and grew to huge sizes, and then how most of them went extinct. And this is a story that it takes place over well more than 150 million years. I want to give you the basic outline of it in 30 minutes or so. So let's jump right into it. We'll start at the beginning, and we'll start about 250 million years ago when the world looked like this. Very different world than today. This was the time of the supercontinent Pangaea, where there was one landmass that stretched from the North Pole to the South Pole. And this was not an easy place to live. It was a very hot world. There were no ice caps at the poles, as you can see there. There were big deserts across much of the supercontinent. But although it was a challenging place to live, there were many types of plants and animals that were well adapted to that world, including many early relatives of mammals, which were at the top of the food chain at that time. But then, about 250 million years ago, these giant volcanoes began to erupt in what is now Siberia in Russia, and they erupted for millions of years. And they sent lava all over the land. The amount of lava would have covered all of Western Europe, actually even more of the land area than that. So a lot of the Earth was covered in lava, but in fact, the real problem with those volcanoes was the greenhouse gases, the carbon dioxide and the methane that came up from the deep Earth with the lava. And those gases went into the atmosphere and they caused global warming. And that global warming, which was very sudden, it led to an extinction, a mass extinction, where about 95% of all species died out. This was the worst extinction that had ever happened in the entire history of the Earth. But some things did survive. And when I was a student, I became very interested in this extinction. I wanted to know what lived and what died and how quickly the world recovered. So I spent a lot of time in Poland looking for fossils. And now maybe Poland is not the type of place you think of when you think of dinosaurs and you think of dinosaur digs and finding fossils. It doesn't really fit that image that we see a lot of times on TV of people going out into the desert and brushing sand off of bones. But there are great fossils in Poland. There are great fossils all over the world. And in Poland, the fossils are largely found in these quarries where they are mining clay to make bricks. And the clay is layer after layer after layer of rock. Those rocks have fossils in them, and those rocks span the time from that extinction, across the extinction into the interval of time after the extinction, which is called the Triassic period. And you can read these layers of rocks like pages in a book. You can see how things change over time. Now, the types of fossils that are very common in Poland are not skeletons or bones or teeth, although there are some of those. The much more common fossils are the marks that animals left behind, the handprints and the footprints and other trace fossils. And in rocks that are just after the extinction, within 1 million years of that terrible extinction, we start to see these kind of trace fossils. We have a handprint and we have a footprint. And these are tiny, just a few centimeters long, about the size of the paw prints that a house cat would make. And they were made by an animal that looked like this. A small animal. I could hold one. It would be something like this big. You know, I could hold it in my arms. Small animal, kind of funny looking, long arms, long legs, skinny little body. And you might not guess it by looking at it, but this is the ancestor of the dinosaurs. This is where dinosaurs came from. I know it looks nothing like T-Rex, nothing like Brontosaurus, but everything has to start somewhere, and this is the humble, simple start of the dinosaurs. Now, during the Triassic period, the dinosaurs started small. They were not huge yet. They were not dominant animals yet. That took some time to happen. And we've done a lot of field work in Portugal that has helped figure out how the dinosaurs took over the world. Now, we have Triassic rocks in Portugal, and we find lots and lots and lots of fossils, but we don't find tons and tons of dinosaurs. Instead, there's not really any dinosaurs at all. Or maybe there's a few, we don't really know for sure, but they're not common. They're not really important. Instead, we find hundreds of skeletons of these enormous salamanders the size of small cars. And these were the types of animals that were at the top of the food chain in the Triassic period, in the rivers, in the lakes, near the water. So if you were one of those small early dinosaurs, you would want to stay away from the water because these things were there waiting for you to eat you. And it wasn't any better on dry land because dry land in the Triassic period, this was the age of the crocodiles. And there were so many different types of extinct crocodiles. There were crocodiles so different than those that we know today. There were crocs with horns and spikes on their bodies. There were crocs with sails on their backs. There were crocs that ate plants. There were crocs that had no teeth, that had beaks instead of teeth. Look at this one here, a croc with a beak. You can imagine something so crazy. And there were crocs at the top of the food chain with big sharp teeth that were bigger than jeeps. There were all kinds of crocs, even some crocs that walked only on their hind legs. They dominated the land. The dinosaurs throughout the Triassic period were really just small characters in a drama of the giant salamanders and the crocodiles. But of course, something happened, and dinosaurs would go on to take over the world, not the crocodiles. And what happened was, about 200 million years ago, at the end of the Triassic period, the big continent of Pangaea began to break apart. And of course it did. This is why we have separate continents today. So North America split from Europe. South America split from Africa. And today, there's water in between the continents, the Atlantic Ocean. But before the water came in to fill those cracks, the Earth bled out lava. There were huge volcanic eruptions as the land was breaking apart. And once again, with the lava came carbon dioxide and methane and all of these greenhouse gases that caused global warming again and again caused another mass extinction. And this extinction, it hit the crocodiles and the salamanders really, really hard. They were the victims of this extinction. They didn't completely die out, but almost all of the diversity of the crocs was gone. And this is why there's so few crocs still with us today. But the dinosaurs were the survivors of that extinction. And I don't know why that is. I wish I could tell you why. Why did the dinosaurs survive the volcanoes when their competitors died? Did the dinosaurs run faster? Could they hide easier? Did they grow faster? I don't know. We don't have a good answer. This is one of the biggest mysteries about dinosaurs that still remains. And I'm sure it will be solved by somebody in the young generation of paleontologists. But what we do know is that as the Triassic period ended and as this extinction wiped out the dinosaurs' competitors, the dinosaurs then found themselves in a new world, a largely empty world, in the next period of time, which is called the Jurassic period. And there's a reason why it's Jurassic Park and not Triassic Park, because it's in the Jurassic period that dinosaurs spread around the world, that dinosaurs started to grow to huge sizes, and that you started to get these enormous long-necked dinosaurs the size of airplanes, these big meat-eating dinosaurs, that you get dinosaurs with horns and spikes and frills and plates on their backs and duckbills and all of these amazing features that make dinosaurs the iconic animals that we all know and love. Now, we are finding more dinosaurs than ever before. This is the golden age of paleontology. At least before COVID shut down a lot of field work around the world, people were finding a new species of dinosaur, on average, once every single week. So that meant there was about 50 new species of dinosaurs, completely new species found every single year. And this is because the field of paleontology is growing. It's diversifying. It's not just a small field with a few people in the richest universities in the US and Great Britain and Canada anymore. It's people around the world. It's young women and young men going into the field. It's so many young researchers in China, in Argentina, in Brazil, in South Africa, in these enormous growing developing countries that are building more universities, more museums, and training new generations of scientists. And this is why there's more people looking for dinosaurs all over the world. People are finding dinosaurs all over the world. We're even finding them right here in Scotland. And Scotland, probably similar to Poland, is not the type of place you think of when you think of dinosaurs, but there is one place in Scotland where you can find amazing dinosaurs, and that is this place, which I think is one of the most beautiful places in the entire world. And this is the Isle of Skye. It's an island off the west coast of Scotland. And they film now a lot of Hollywood movies there because the scenery is so beautiful. Such a beautiful place. And luckily for us, it's also full of fossils. Now, we've been working on Skye for many years now. It's a challenging place to work. It's cold, it's wet, it rains all the time, it's windy. Most of the rocks with the fossils are near the water, So we always are battling the tides, high tide, low tide, high tide, low tide. But it's very rewarding because, in part, we get to take our students there. So I take my students to Sky. This is where we train them to find fossils. And I'm being totally honest when I say that the best fossils are always found by our students. And this is the best example of that. That's Amelia in the middle there, one of our former PhD students. And while we were there a few years ago, Amelia found this thing she's looking at, which turned out to be a skeleton of a pterodactyl, which is incredible. Nobody had ever found anything like that in Scotland before until Amelia found this one. And we're working on this right now, and hopefully we'll be able to announce it fairly soon. But pterodactyls are not dinosaurs. They're another type of reptile that would fly in the sky. So I won't say any more about pterodactyls because I want to keep on to dinosaurs. Now, our students in Sky, they find great things. We teach them techniques. This is Moji, one of our students. She came from Nigeria to study with us. And there she is removing some small fossils from the rock using a cutting tool. But when it comes to dinosaurs, we need bigger tools. And this is Doogie Ross, who lives on the Isle of Skye, who grew up on Skye. He's a local guy, a great fossil collector. There he is cutting a dinosaur bone, there's the bone, out of this rock with the diamond tip saw. Incredible. Now, I could say a lot about Scotland and the Isle of Skye, but I want to tell you about one discovery, which I think, at least until Amelia found that pterodactyl, was our most important discovery. And this we found at the very northern tip of the island at a place called Duntullum, right in the shadows of the ruins of a 14th century castle. Very Scottish scene. Now I'm taking this picture near that castle, and it's sunny out. You can see it's not raining. It's a beautiful day. You might ask, why am I taking a picture instead of looking for fossils? It's sunny. I should be looking for fossils. Well, that's because the tide is high. You can see the water is right up to the beach. So we couldn't look for fossils. But when the tide went down, that beach turns into a rock platform. And we went there looking for bones, and we looked all day for bones. We didn't find any bones. We were very disappointed. And then as we were walking back to our cars at the end of the day, we were just about to go back to where we were staying. We were going to have pasta that night. Actually, my student Davide Fofo, who's Italian, it was his night to cook, so we were looking forward to that. That was going to be the end of a really disappointing day. But then we started to notice these big holes in the rock, and each one was about the size of a car tire. And in fact, there was over 100 of these holes, and they had a pattern to them. They weren't just random. There was a left, right, zigzagging pattern. And we could see these things from the side, and we could see they were actually impressed into the rock. So they had to form from something moving into the sand when it was soft before it became rock. And some of these things had structure to them. They had little bits sticking out, 1, 2, 3, 4. And many of them were paired together. There was a bigger horseshoe-shaped one with a smaller crescent-shaped one in front. And they really were truly big. This is the biggest one of all. It's more than 70 centimeters across. And so after a few minutes, we realized, wait a minute, this was actually a great day. We had found fossils. Not bones, but more footprints, but so much bigger than those footprints from Poland, because in Skye, we're in the Jurassic period. These are Jurassic rocks, and the dinosaurs have gotten much bigger by this time. And there's really only one type of dinosaur, really only one type of animal that's ever lived on the land in the entire history of the Earth that was so big that it would leave a hole the size of a car tire every time its hand or foot hit the ground. And that's this type of dinosaur. One of the enormous long-necked dinosaurs like Brontosaurus or Diplodocus. These are what we call the sauropod dinosaurs. And the one that left its footprints and handprints on Skye was the size of probably about 3 or 4 elephants put together. It was huge, and in the Jurassic period was when these dinosaurs were properly becoming really, really, really big. And later on, some of them would even become bigger than Boeing 737 airplanes, which is crazy if you think about it. Now, more recently, we've been finding more and more track sites on Sky, and we've been mapping them with drones. This is my student Paige, and she came over from the US to study with us, and she's an expert on engineering technology, and she's been using drones to map all of these track sites. And we have tracks of the big long-necked dinosaurs. We have tracks of, in fact, many types of dinosaurs living in the lagoons and on the beaches in the Jurassic period in Scotland, back when Scotland was much warmer than it is today. It was a subtropical world, and you had big long-necked dinosaurs. You had meat-eating dinosaurs like this. This is an early cousin of T-Rex, just about the size of a person, but it left its footprints behind. We have footprints from stegosaur dinosaurs with the plates on their backs. We have footprints from duck-billed dinosaurs that ate plants. There's a whole ecosystem of these Jurassic dinosaurs on Sky, and they give us a glimpse of how dinosaurs were taking over the world in the Jurassic period. And some of these dinosaurs, like those long-necked dinosaurs, and then later on the Tyrannosaur dinosaurs, they were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But there was another type of dinosaur on the family tree which was doing the opposite, which was getting smaller and smaller and smaller over time. And these are the dinosaurs like Velociraptor. This is the real Velociraptor. The Jurassic Park Velociraptor is not very accurate. I know it pains me to say because I'm the consultant now for the Jurassic World movies. But the Jurassic Park Velociraptor, oh, it's too big. The real Velociraptor was only the size of a small dog. The Jurassic Park Velociraptor is green and covered in scales. It looks like a crocodile or a lizard. The real Velociraptor had feathers. The real Velociraptor even had wings. We know this from real fossils. And these are the fossils that tell us that today's birds evolved from dinosaurs like Velociraptor. And these are the most important dinosaur fossils that have ever been found in my lifetime. They come from northeastern China, this place called Liaoning. It's a gentle landscape of rolling hills and factories and many, many farms. They grow a lot of corn and other crops up there. And it's the farmers who, in the 1990s, started to find a lot of these types of things in the rocks on their land. And these are skeletons of dinosaurs, beautifully preserved, covered in feathers. And there are now thousands of these dinosaurs. They had the bad luck of being buried by a volcano. Very similar, in fact, to Pompeii, to what happened when Vesuvius erupted and buried Pompeii and all the people in Pompeii, and it locked them into place. It's, you know, it's a very sad scene when you go to Pompeii and see the people that were buried in ash. They were walking their dog, they were cooking breakfast, they were just living their lives. The same with these dinosaurs, and they were buried so quickly that the feathers preserved. And these fossils tell us, first of all, they're the best evidence that today's birds evolved from dinosaurs. Birds have feathers, nothing else has feathers. Feathers are very complex structures. If these dinosaurs had feathers, this was the last piece of evidence to prove that birds really did evolve from dinosaurs, which was an idea that went back to the time of Darwin. But the other thing these dinosaurs tell us, they tell us how feathers evolved and how flight evolved, and how birds emerged from dinosaurs. One of the first things the Chinese fossils tell us is that many dinosaurs, maybe even all dinosaurs, had some type of feather on their body, similar to how all mammals have some type of hair. Some mammals are hairier than others, but all mammals have some type of hair. Seems to be the same case with dinosaurs. So this is part of the tail of a tyrannosaur. And these things, these are the tail bones, these things above the bones that look like scratches, those are feathers. But they're very simple feathers. They look like hair. They're just little individual strands. And there's no way this tyrannosaur could fly using those feathers any more than, you know, I can fly using whatever hair I have left on my head. No way. So the first feathers in dinosaurs did not evolve for flying. They evolved for other reasons. probably to help keep these dinosaurs warm, the same reason hair evolved in mammals. And that's how most dinosaurs kept it. Most dinosaurs had simple feathers, maybe just on small parts of their bodies. But one group of dinosaurs, those raptor dinosaurs, they started to change their feathers. As their bodies got smaller and smaller over time, the feathers became very densely packed all over their bodies. And then on the arms, the feathers started to line up. They started to get longer, and they started to branch out. So there wasn't just single strands anymore, but branching strands that got flat and turned into that classic quill pen, quill feather shape that we know from the wings of birds today. This here is a fossil wing. You can see these are the individual feathers lining up on the arm, going onto the hand. The size, the shape, the position of the feathers, almost identical to the wings of birds today. But this is not a bird. This is a raptor dinosaur, a close cousin of Velociraptor. It is this dinosaur, this new species, and you pronounced it beautifully, I have to say. This is Zhenwanlong, the new raptor dinosaur. And we described this a few years ago. It is a gorgeous fossil, maybe the prettiest, most beautiful fossil I've ever worked on. All the bones are there in this rich chocolate brown color. And then you have feathers all over the body, feathers on the tail, feathers on the back and the belly, and then the wings. This is that wing from the previous picture. There's the entire wing. There's the other wing. In life, this dinosaur would have looked something like this. And I think if you saw it alive, you would just think it's a bird. A weird bird, a pretty big bird, a bird with big claws, kind of funny looking, but I don't think you would think it's any stranger than an ostrich or an emu or a turkey. But we don't call it a bird because it couldn't fly. It was too big and its wings were too small for those wings to keep it in the air if it flapped those wings. And actually, the very first wings we see in the fossil record come from dinosaurs that are the size of horses, and the wings were just about the size of my computer screen here. So, you know, just about like this. So a wing like this size on an animal the size of the horse, no way could that animal flap that wing and fly in the air. So even the first wings, it looks like, probably evolved for other reasons. And we think probably as display structures, essentially as advertising billboards that were sticking out of the arms of these dinosaurs that they used to attract mates and intimidate rivals. And you can imagine, though, evolution, doing what it always does through natural selection, evolution could take a dinosaur like this and make it just a bit smaller, make its wings just a bit bigger. So you had an animal that all of a sudden had wings that were big enough that if it moved those wings around, those wings could provide some lift, they could provide some thrust, and they could keep that dinosaur in the air. And it's at that point that we say birds evolved, proper, true birds that could flap their wings, keep themselves in the air, and fly. And Archaeopteryx is the oldest example of a true bird from the fossil record. It comes from the Jurassic period. So it was diversifying, birds were diversifying right when dinosaurs were getting bigger and bigger, and right when those dinosaurs were waiting in those lagoons on the Isle of Skye. Now, it's a weird idea for some people I know, this idea that birds are dinosaurs. And sometimes people still try to argue with me, and they'll say, no, birds are not dinosaurs. Okay, they evolved from dinosaurs, but they look nothing like a T-Rex or a Brontosaurus, so we should call them something else. We should not call them dinosaurs. And I always say, hey, look at something like this. This is a bat. Obviously, this is a bat. A bat is a mammal. Of course, a bat is a mammal. Nobody would argue otherwise. It has hair. It feeds its young with milk. It has the same kind of teeth and ear bones that all mammals have. A bat just happens to be a strange type of mammal that got small and evolved wings and developed the ability to fly. And birds are the dinosaur equivalent of that. They're a strange type of dinosaur that got small, evolved wings, and develop the ability to fly. And they just so happen to be the only dinosaurs that are still around today. So there are over 10,000 species of dinosaurs still with us, more than double the number of mammal species around today. And some are majestic, like the bald eagle. Some are absolutely not majestic in any way. Some, like this seagull here, are pests, and they're annoying, and we don't like them. But next time you're at the beach or anywhere where there might be a seagull and you see one of these things come down and try to steal your chips or steal your ice cream, think about that for a second. Watch that gull, and I think in that moment you can see the intelligence, the nastiness, the feistiness. You can see and sense the inner velociraptor in a seagull. And that's actually a real thing, because velociraptor is one of the closest ancestors and relatives to birds. Birds did evolve from an animal like velociraptor. And they're the only dinosaurs still with us. All the other dinosaurs, the T-Rexes, the Brontosauruses, the Triceratopses, all of those things died out 66 million years ago at the end of the Cretaceous period. This was the time after the Jurassic period. By that time, the continents had still been moving, and the world was looking much, much more similar to what it looks like today. Sea levels were much higher. Europe was mostly a set of islands rather than a continent. But by and large, you can start to recognize this world. This was what the world looked like on that day, 66 million years ago, that Thursday afternoon, let's say, when this giant 6-mile wide, 10-kilometer wide asteroid, traveling faster than a speeding bullet, slammed into the Earth with the force of over 1 billion nuclear bombs put together and punched a hole in the crust more than 150 kilometers wide in what is now Mexico, and this changed everything. Earthquakes, wildfires, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, all kinds of chaos happened, and the dinosaurs and so many other types of animals did not make it. They did not make it. And there were many dinosaurs that were alive that day the asteroid hit. They were thriving. They were on top of the food chain. Even T-Rex itself was living at that time, but they did not survive the asteroid. Only a few birds did, and they are the last remaining legacy of the dinosaur dynasty. Now, the more I study dinosaurs, the more I get interested in what happened after the dinosaurs left. And so I find myself, or at least did before COVID, spending a lot more time in New Mexico. And New Mexico in the US is one of the best places in the world that shows what happened right after the asteroid hit, how the world changed, how a new world came into being. And I have a lot of students that work on fossils from New Mexico. We go there, we dig up fossils. I train my students there now. It's a lot of fun. And the fossils we find in rocks that were formed within just thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years after the dinosaurs died are these kind of fossils. These are not dinosaurs anymore. The dinosaurs are gone. But you might recognize these things because we all have these kind of things inside our mouths. These are teeth, but they're not the steak knife teeth of T-Rex. These are the molars and premolars of mammals. And it was mammals that took over from the dinosaurs. The asteroid cleared away the dinosaurs. Many mammals also died, but some mammals survived. Those mammals included our ancestors. And within a few million years of the asteroid, New Mexico was teeming with these kind of animals. Small, kind of funny looking, long arms and legs, about the size of a house cat. But they could grip the branches with their flexible hands and opposable thumbs. And these are the primates. These are our ancestors. And they only got their opportunity because that asteroid killed the dinosaurs. And that goes to show how all of this is connected. Our story is linked to the dinosaur story in one grand narrative history of life. So thank you very much for your attention, everybody. Really appreciate it. And very much looking forward to the conversation and the chat and the questions. So cheers, grazie mille, and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Steve. Your enthusiasm is really contagious, I think.
Oh, thanks. Better than a contagious virus, so.
Yes, unfortunately. I would say that you are paid to have fun at the end. And so, and this is what everybody should do, be paid for having fun.
I'm very lucky. I know that, incredibly lucky, incredibly fortunate, to have this kind of job and to train students to do this too. I think, probably so many of us on this call are doing things, studying things, researching things that we love and we're interested in. And I think we're all fortunate, but those of us that can dig up dinosaurs for our job is pretty cool.
So thank you. We have some questions. I can read the questions in the Cisco. Maybe if Marco can help me with the Teams. So we have a question from Michaela who say, being really inexperienced in this area, I have a curiosity. How do footprints become fossils before they disappear from the ground?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, because if you think about it, like if we're walking on a beach and we make footprints in the sand, usually a wave will come and just wash those away. And that's what's going to happen to like 99.99999% of any footprint that's ever made. But maybe you've also seen sometimes maybe like in a farmer's field where cows have made some footprints in the mud. And the mud has dried up. And so those footprints are kind of hard. Well, if you can then imagine something covering those tracks, maybe some sand washes over, or wind blows some sand, or some other mud, that's how you can get tracks preserved. And if that stuff then turns into rock and is hardened over time, that's how you can get the tracks preserving for millions of years. The odds are very, very small, but like so many things, the Earth is so old that over many hundreds of millions of years, you're always going to have some cases where that perfect kind of preservation happens.
Okay, we have another question. I think it's from Marco. Marco, do you want to say it? Or I want you to read.
Okay, I can say it if you want. Okay, yeah. First of all, thank you very much because it was a very interesting and well presented talk. I was saying that I'm a bit biased because I'm a bone biologist, but I'm interested about in dinosaur bones. What did they look like at the microscopic level? Was their structure similar to larger mammals? What were the cells that lived in them like? Do we have any information about this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And yes, people study this. There's a whole area of paleontology that involves bone histology, that involves making thin sections of bones and looking at those thin sections under microscopes and looking at the texture of the bone. That can give insight into growth, like how fast the dinosaur was growing. And also bones, most dinosaur bones have growth lines in them, just like a tree trunk. So you can tell the age of the dinosaur when it died. And that can really give insight into, how old the dinosaurs get. This is why we know, for instance, that T-Rex wouldn't have lived past 30 years old. As big as it was, I mean, it didn't take long for it to grow to that size, and it was long dead by the time it was my age. So that's how we know those kind of things. The internal structure of dinosaur bone generally is quite similar to the bone of mammals. It's the same basic tissues. And there's osteocyte lacunae, the little holes where the osteocytes would be, that sort of thing. Some dinosaurs had very hollowed out bones, just like many birds do today. There's a whole lot more to learn about this, and there's so many researchers now that are studying the microstructure of dinosaur bones.
Yeah, you answered also to my question about the avian bones that are a bit different from the mammalian bones, so you answered that there was some similar structure. So we have Luca, who thanks you for the wonderful presentation. He has a question to say, maybe I missed it, but how did you manage to discover that the asteroid landed exactly in Mexico?
Yes, this is like forensic science, like detectives at a crime scene. So the first evidence of any type that there was an asteroid that hit the Earth was not the actual crater. The crater was found later. You know, the hole the asteroid made was found about 10 years after the first evidence emerged, and that evidence was chemical. And in fact, that evidence was found in Italy. It was found in Gubbio, the town of Gubbio, in the Apennines. And there's a thin layer of rock there. It's only about 1 centimeter thick. And actually, a lot of rocks around the world also have this layer. And this marks the exact time when the Cretaceous period ends and when we know there was the extinction. And it was a geologist from America named Walter Alvarez who was actually in Italy studying other things. He was studying the history of the tectonic plates in Italy and how the modern Mediterranean kind of came together over geological time. But he made some samples of this rock unit, and he saw there was a huge amount of an element, a chemical element called iridium, in that rock. And that's a very rare element on Earth, but very common in outer space. And so that was evidence that something extraterrestrial happened at that moment of time when we know the dinosaurs went extinct and many other things went extinct. So he made the hypothesis that there was an asteroid or a comet that hit the Earth, and then lots of evidence was compiled to support that. And then about 10 years later, the crater was found in Mexico, and it took that amount of time to find it because most of the crater is underwater, it's under the Gulf of Mexico, so you can't just see it, you know, by like flying over, you know. So it was actually geologists from oil companies that were doing surveys of the Earth to map the structure of the Earth in that area to see where there might be oil reservoirs that noticed there was this big crater shape. And then they studied it, and they're able to date it using the techniques that we use to date rocks from radioisotopic decay, that saw that crater was formed exactly 66 million years ago, right when that iridium layer is in the rocks, right when dinosaurs went extinct.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question from Giovanni. Is there any study about correlation of history of Earth gravity and size of dinosaurs?
I'm glad you asked that question. Yeah, that's a really good question. And people used to think that one of the reasons that some dinosaurs got so big was because gravity was maybe weaker during the time of the dinosaurs than today. And it turns out that that's not the case, that gravity has basically been the same. I mean, there might be minuscule differences, but nothing that's that dramatic. Now, I don't know how gravity may have changed over like the entire history of the Earth. I'm not really sure. I know very little about astrophysics and that sort of thing. So it's a good question. Maybe, you know, the dinosaurs were, the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. So although the dinosaurs are old, they're still pretty close in time to us. And gravity seems to be pretty similar. But maybe if we went back 3 billion years or something, gravity, maybe it would be different, especially as the mass of the Earth has changed over time. So I don't know the answer there, but I think that would be something really interesting to look at.
Okay, so Loredana asks, can dinosaurs extinction studies help us understand or interpret the signals for other mass extinctions?
Yes, definitely. So the Cretaceous extinction, when the dinosaurs died, that's the most recent mass extinction in the history of the Earth. There have been 5 big mass extinctions, including the one at the end of the Permian that I started our story with those volcanoes in Siberia, and then the one at the end of the Triassic when Pangaea split apart, and then the Cretaceous. And there were 2 earlier ones. Maybe right now we're in a 6th extinction. Maybe you've heard this term. There's a very famous book called The Sixth Extinction that Elizabeth Colbert wrote. It won the Pulitzer Prize. You know, a great piece of science writing. And we see that term used a lot, the 6th extinction, because a lot of species are dying now, mostly because of us, because of the impact we have on the Earth, because of overpopulation and pollution and clearing forests and so on. So where dinosaurs and other fossils come in really useful is helping to understand extinctions today. You know, our extinctions today happening faster than in the past. And yes, it does look like they are. I mean, we've just started really as humans killing things. So, but the rate of killing things is really fast. So that's one thing automatically that looking at dinosaurs and other fossils tell us. It gives us a baseline for saying, yes, what's happening now today is not normal. Many more species are dying much quicker than before. And then there's just lots more we can do with dinosaurs or with other fossils to study how ecosystems, how organisms change over time as climates change, as temperatures change, as global warming happens, as sea levels rise and fall. We can model these things, we can predict these things for our world today, but the fossil record shows us what actually happened in real life millions of years ago when the temperature went up, when the sea levels went up. And so that's one place where dinosaurs are very useful. And just the one thing I'll say about that is, global warming's happened now. It's happened before. It's happened many times before. We saw in this talk at the end of the Permian, at the end of the Triassic, where it caused those big extinctions. Not every global warming causes extinctions, but those two did, because at the end of the Permian and end of the Triassic, the global warming was really fast. It took place over kind of tens to hundreds of thousands of years. What we're doing now is even faster. And so in that sense, the mass extinctions in the fossil record give us a baseline to say the changes in climate happening today are much faster than changes in the past that caused extinctions. So those are a couple of examples of where this line of thinking with fossils can be useful.
Okay, so it seems, Steve, that you destroyed the imagination of Antonio about the Velociraptors, so he's a little bit disappointed about that. And he'd like to know the potentiality of your research in terms of new discoveries. So what we are missing about the dinosaurs?
There's still a lot we don't know. I know the way I tell the story, I go from the start to the end, and it sounds all nice and clean. But there's still a lot of mysteries. I think the biggest mystery is why dinosaurs survived that extinction at the end of the Triassic when their competitors, the crocs and the big salamanders, were decimated. And I don't know the answer. Somebody's going to have to figure that out. There's other mysteries about dinosaurs just like that. The more we find, the more we realize that what we don't know. And we're finding so many new species so fast that there's still big debates about the dinosaur family tree, about how they're all related to each other. And there's still a lot more to be found. That's the other thing. We are not running out of dinosaurs. There are still a lot more fossils to be found out there. So for all young people that are interested in the field, for all young people interested in the field, or even anybody, you don't have to be young, anybody that wants to go and study dinosaurs and make a contribution, don't worry, there's still a lot more to be found. There's still big parts of the Earth that haven't been well explored. The Earth is a big place. So the fact we're still finding new dinosaurs in Scotland, people have been living here for a long time. There have been universities and museums here for a long time. My university goes back to the late 1500s. I know many in Italy are even older. But, you'd think a place like this that's had scientists, back to the 1500s in the universities, everything would be found. No, we still find new stuff all the time. So that makes this field very exciting. It's kind of like being a gold prospector, maybe. You're going out, you're looking for something, you don't know what you're going to find. There's stuff out there, and you hope you can be the one to find it.
And in line with this, Pier Giorgio asks how the technology and the new scientific discoveries of today will help you in your study about dinosaurs.
Yeah, the field is very technological, like all areas of science now. And what's interesting about paleontology is there's two parts to paleontology. There's the part where we go out and look for fossils. And we are like gold prospectors. We don't have fancy tools. We don't have radar that we shoot into the rocks to see where the bones are. That doesn't work. So we have to go out and we have to look, and we have to try to go to the right places, and we have to be patient and persistent, and we see what we find. And then we hack it out of the ground with hammers and with saws, and it is very much like a gold prospector. But then the other half of paleontology is when we find the fossils, we bring them back to the lab, it's how we study them. And we use all kinds of technology, and we're always changing. And, you know, the best example I can give is with CAT scanning. So, you know, CAT scanners used very commonly in medicine. Medical doctors will give us CAT scans if there's something, you know, wrong with us and they want to see inside our bodies, you know, before doing a surgery. We can use the same technology for fossils, and all the time we put fossils in CAT scanners, especially things like the skulls of dinosaurs, because we can use the x-rays of the scanner to see inside the head, to see the brain cavity, to see the ear, you know, and then we can build digital models of those things. We can measure how big the brain was. We can start to, you know, hypothesize about the intelligence of dinosaurs and the types of senses they had. And there's many other examples of, you know, new technologies from other areas of science that are becoming, you know, really, really, really important for us.
Yes. So we have Letizia asking, have you ever found fossilized faces, and did you discover how characterizing better the environment?
Yeah, good question. Yep, there are fossilized species. I know it sounds disgusting, but they're actually a fairly common fossil. They're another type of trace fossil, like a footprint. They're something that, you know, the dinosaurs left behind. And they can tell you important things because you can see what's in them. I mean, what food were these dinosaurs eating? And there are coprolites, we call them coprolites, that's the term for fossilized species. And some coprolites, of course, have plants in them from plant-eating dinosaurs, and that gives you a sense of the diversity of plants they were eating, which plants they favored. And there's coprolites from meat-eating dinosaurs, and in one very famous case, there was a coprolite from a T-Rex that was found. It was about this big, it was huge, more than a foot long, and it was full of chunks of bone. And that showed that that T-Rex actually bit through the bones of its prey and swallowed those pieces as it was eating. And that was the first insight that these tyrannosaurs had a feeding style that was so different than other dinosaurs and so different from mammals we know today. I mean, it was literally so strong it would crush the bones of its prey. And we wouldn't have known that, or at least we wouldn't have had the first ideas about that except that that was found in that coprolite.
Okay, so Andrea asks, are there studies about some diseases that could hit dinosaurs? Probably from the bones, you can say that.
Yep. I mean, dinosaurs probably did have pandemics occasionally. They wouldn't have gotten COVID because you can tell from the DNA of COVID, you know, of the virus that it's a pretty recent virus. You know, I remember reading something, I think it's maybe like 8,000 years old or something, the COVID family. And then maybe there's some evidence they go back, you know, a few tens of millions of years, but that's very much a mammalian virus. But there would have been other viruses dinosaurs were susceptible to, bacterial infections, cancers, and lots of injuries, and we can see these things on dinosaur bones. So if any type of injury or sickness leaves a mark on the bones, we can potentially see it in fossils. And so there are dinosaur bones that have tumors on them, bone tumors. There's dinosaur bones that have the evidence of gout, you know, that disease where you eat too much rich food. Basically, on the bones, you can see that. There's dinosaur bones that have holes and other marks that are telltale signs of bacterial infections, including from similar bacteria and also viruses that birds get today. And then there's tons of injuries. I mean, there's so many dinosaurs with broken bones and so on that, you know, some are healed up, some are not. And that gives you a sense of, did the dinosaur survive or did it not?
Yeah, I have a question. One T-Rex and others evolved bipeds, so with on two legs.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
So the T-Rex was biped, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So he had, why they evolved this way? It should not be the size, because T-Rex and others were so different in size. So what was the reason?
It's an unusual way of walking just on 2 feet. I mean, we do it, so it seems normal, but, you know, you think about it, it's very rare. And, you know, it was Aristotle, I think, or Plato, I can't remember, that, you know, defined humans as featherless bipeds, because really the only other bipeds are birds. You know, birds walk on their feet and they use their arms to fly. And birds are bipeds, though, because their dinosaur ancestors were bipeds. And that's really why T-Rex is a biped, because it evolved from other bipeds. Now, some dinosaurs did switch to walking on all fours, like the long-necked dinosaur. They got so big, that's the only way they could walk. But T-Rex is interesting because it got pretty big, but it still only walked on 2 legs. And in fact, its arms got so small, the arms were doing very little. So it was really a giant head on 2 legs. And it worked. It must have worked, you know. Natural selection did its thing, and it worked. But maybe if evolution happened a little bit differently, there's always randomness in evolution. You know, maybe a T-Rex ancestor might have started walking on all fours if things, you know, just turned out a bit differently. You never know with evolution.
Okay, so we have only 5 minutes left. I see Marco has a couple of questions. Please, short questions and short answers. Marco?
Yeah, thank you. I just have a curiosity, because you said a lot about finding places where to find fossils. How do you identify these places?
Well, we have to do our homework. So we basically look at geological maps, and much of the world has been mapped because people want to know where to find oil, diamonds, gold, all that stuff. So we can consult geological maps and see what types of rocks are where and the ages of those rocks. And then it's really a matter of just going and looking and hoping for the best.
Marco?
Yeah, thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, maybe I can go with a more provocative one. If asteroid were to hit Earth today, which species would survive?
Well, I think there's always a bit of randomness when it comes to a sudden mass extinction. You know, everything isn't necessarily logical. It's chaos, and some things can happen by bad luck or good luck. But in general, when the asteroid hit at the end of the Cretaceous, we can see that a lot of the survivors tended to be smaller. They could hide easier, they could grow fast, and they could eat a lot of different foods. So it would be those kind of animals that would probably survive easier if an asteroid hit today. So we are talking about things like rats and mice and so on. So the bigger animals, things like elephants and rhinos, would probably be in big trouble, most likely.
Okay, so we don't have more time for questions. I want just to let you know, Steve, that the translation in Italy of the book was very good. So very enjoyable. I think that you have a lot of seagulls in Hamburg for investigating. They make a lot of noise, so I think that you have a lot of material to continue your work on the seagulls. And don't forget that we are in L'Aquila, that is not far from Gubbio. So
yes, that's right. You are close. Yeah, exactly.
So you should just visit us. We are close to the highest mountain in the Apennines. And so it's a nice area. Maybe you can find some other dinosaurs here.
I would love to visit. Once COVID is past us, we can travel again. We're vaccinated. I can't wait to come back to Italy. We were supposed to go and have a little time away in Milano this year, but of course that was canceled. We were disappointed. So, you know, the way the world is. But I would love to visit you guys, you know, in the future when things start. So just keep in touch. And I have a book on mammals that I'm writing now, and that will come out next summer. I don't know if it'll have an Italian translation. I hope so.
I think we can buy the English version. So yeah. Okay. So if there are any other questions, maybe you can contact me, because I have Steve's email address, so you can chat with him. I'm sure that he will do this to answer the questions.
Absolutely.
So Steve, it has been really a great talk. Thank you for your enthusiasm. For me, it's important that we transfer this enthusiasm to the young people. Let's keep in touch, and I'm sure that one day we will meet. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Stay well, stay safe, and ciao till next time.
Ciao. Ciao.